The legendary Bobo of Cypress Hill joins me. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm very, very well. Cypress Hill returns to Toronto May 22nd, Coca-Cola Coliseum. You're bringing Della Soul and Farside with you. I mean, what a trio that is. That's a night out if there ever was one.
Oh yeah, if you're talking about some classic hip hop, there it is right there.
Yeah, it's going to be a big, big night. Cypress Hill touring all across Canada. The weed laws here. I mean, it's coast to coast, baby.
Yeah. You guys, congratulations on that. I remember we did a show out. I don't know if it was in Toronto. I forget because it's kind of a blur. But day that it was legalized there in Canada, we did a show, and it was massive. How many people came out? So yeah, I mean the word has gotten out, and now we're celebrating.
Yeah, we are. Did you ever see it possible that the Western world would embrace cannabis the way that it has?
It was always I thought that yeah, it was definitely possible, but we needed different legislators in the government to kind of see the light. And really, I didn't think that it was going to happen this quick. I thought it was going to be a little longer. But it's amazing how people kind of start to fall in line with this, and incredible.
Yeah, and a,
All right.
a generation comes along and they just think differently, and I think that part of that is the art and the different walks of life that we get exposed to throughout a lot of pop culture and things like that. And Cypress Hill had a huge hand in that, right? Like sort of normalizing it in a way and making it seem, not as dangerous, but as something communal.
Well, it was always kind of meant that way. I think for people that were doing it even in the 60s, it was that kind of mentality. But
Sure.
I think that, the powers that be at that time really tried to make it look more worse than it was. And I think we have people like, comedians like George Carlin could talk about it, to Cheech and Chong, making albums about it, to eventually going into hip hop music and everything like that, and it's even been sprinkled in rock music as well. So the awareness was always out there, but again, just to see it kind of gain its acceptance was something. And like I said, when it started to happen, and it started to the next year, it's like more states were uh, coming on board, and then other countries are starting to come on board. So we needed to be West Coast to East Coast over in the States, just like you guys have it.
That's right. Hey, we teach you a thing or two up here. Don't you worry about that. Let's talk about the music. June 6th, we're going to get Black Sunday live at Royal Albert Hall, available out there to the world with the London Symphony Orchestra. Obviously, that plays into the classic Simpsons clip, of course. But I
Yeah.
wonder, like the London Symphony Orchestra, you have this vision of them as these posh people from England, and then you guys are you're from California and from such different walks of life. When you get in that room to start to build that set list and put those songs together, does it all just like become a bunch of musicians in a room pretty quickly?
Eventually, yes, it definitely did. Like our first rehearsal all together, I'm sure they were wondering what we were going to do, and we were wondering how we were going to do, because with them, these are seasoned musicians that they sight read music, and you put anything in front of them, they can play it like they've been playing it for all their lives. This was a different experience for us. Fortunately, we had played with four other orchestras previous to this show, so we were able to kind of wet our beak a little bit. But eventually, the minute that they saw that we were on it and we were on point, and we knew they were going to be on point, then it just became musicians. It became just like a common thing, and it flowed so well. because it wasn't like an us and them thing. It was really a true collab, and I think that that comes through.
That's all. I can't wait to hear it. June 6th will be available for everyone to check out. I love that you're doing press and putting yourself out there for us to chat with and stuff because I feel like hopefully you're getting more of your flowers. You played on some of the most iconic records ever, like with the Beastie Boys once upon a time. And it
Yeah,
seems like nobody checks those liner notes and knows that. So gave us two of the best ever with Hello Nasty and Ill Communication.
yes, sir.
Awesome. And then you go on tour with them and meet the Cypress guys, right? Is that how the
Yeah,
connection happened?
yeah. It basically was 92. You know, I got the call from Mike D. Uh, then would I be interested in joining the last leg of the Check Your Head tour? And previous to meeting him there, you know, I did, you know, Ad Rock's wedding. I was the entertainment. I had my little,
Okay.
so we did the wedding march and everything like that, and we, well, you know, there. So the guys we were all jamming there. But yeah, '92. That's when I joined up with the Beasties, and the last 2 weeks of that tour, the opening group was replaced with Cypress Hill. So my worlds collided on my very first big tour.
Serendipitous. That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Um,
it was crazy.
so then how does that conversation like do you say to them, man, you know what would really round out your sound if you had a kick-ass drummer in the mix? Or did they say, man, you're killing it up there. We've been thinking about sort of adding a little more percussion to the sound and live shows and stuff.
You know, with Cypress, it was a thing with, you know, it was primarily Sendog that was like saying, "Yo, man, you should jam with us." Him being of Latin descent, you know, he understood the percussion thing, but I knew hip hop. You know, I grew up with hip hop, so I kind of knew how to play it without it being like overbearing, I guess. And they were peeping us out like every night, and how that conversation got to be like, okay, let's add some percussion during a time that, you know, hip hop was purist. It was like a DJ and MCs, and that's it. There was no other band on there, band musician up there. So we were doing something really early on that no one else was doing, and adding that to the live show, and kind of keeping it spontaneous. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're not just hearing what you're used to hearing; you're hearing these other sounds, and you can kind of break down and do other things. So it made it interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the legacy is one of the greatest hip hop acts of all time in Cypress Hill. When you go back and think of like you add that and then you start doing like the Judgment Night soundtracks, things like that. There's Run DMC's doing the stuff with Aerosmith and Public Enemies working with Anthrax and stuff. And all of a sudden these like lines get blurred. And I wonder what you see as like the legacy of Cypress Hill in the fact that it's not just hip hop. There's a ton of rock and roll in there. There's a ton of just kick-ass music in general from Cypress Hill, and just what you see is sort of the trail that you guys have blazed.
You know, we're fortunate to all be listening to different types of music, and I think like with Muggs, who, you know, produced, you know, everything, he was really wide open musically. You know, he was listening to blues, he was listening to other rock stuff, and so were being sent. And myself, I was coming from a Latin jazz, Latin fusion world, but growing up in hip hop and hearing everything. So I think that that lent itself to being able to dip into different genres a little bit. I mean, had we not been real true fans of, you know, rock music, Rock Superstar might have never been made. You know, but even before that, in the hip hop, like on the Black Sunday album, there was Black Sabbath samples. There were
Yeah.
other rock samples that were, you know, used. So I think that hip hop is the true Frankenstein music because it took from different areas. You know, it could take from soul and rock and classical and make this sound. And I think that Cypress kind of jumped on that early on, which opened up the door to be able to do stuff like the Judgment Night soundtrack and Skull and Bones, and be able to be the only hip hop group that'll play on some of these uh, alternative and rock festivals. Because sometimes we would be like, are we supposed to be here? Because we're like the only hip hop group that's on here. But, you know, at the same time, we got people like saying, we don't really listen to hip hop, but we love Cypress Hill. Not every hip hop group has been able to cross over like that, other than a group like Public Enemy or the Beastie Boys and, you know, people like that.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have been, as I say, trailblazers the whole way. We can't wait to see you May 22nd, Coca-Cola Coliseum with Farside and De La Soul. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I could talk to you all day, but they're wrapping me up. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, sir. We'll
All
see you
good.
in May.
Thank you very much for having me, man, and hope to see you at the show.
Absolutely. Cheers, brother.
All right, peace.